2009 was a distinguished Czech scholar in Indian literature and linguistics, notably Tamil, Sanskrit, Dravidian linguistics and literature and philology. And until 1970 he was a senior research fellow in Tamil and Dravidian linguistics and literature at the Oriental Institute of the Czechoslovak Academy of Sciences. He held the role of Associate Professor of Tamil and Dravidian at Charles University in Prague until 1968, when he and his family, including his son, the later archaeologist, Marek Zvelebil, were forced to flee after the Warsaw Pact invasion of Czechoslovakia. They fled to the United States at first, but later settled in the Netherlands. During the late 1960s, he made many field trips including those to South India. From 1965 to 1966, he was a temporary professor in Dravidian Studies at the University of Chicago in the United States and was a visiting professor at Heidelberg University between 1967 and 1968. Furthermore, he is very well known among the Tamil Nadu and has earned a permanent place in the educational syllabus of the Dravidian states. In 1970, after more time at the University of Chicago, he was a visiting professor at the Collège de France in Paris. After more travel through European universities he became the professor of Dravidian linguistics and South Indian literature and culture at Utrecht University until his retirement in 1992. Zvelebil also made the only known translation of the Kural text in the Czech language, numerous books and articles on Dravidian linguistics and literature. Some of them are Comparative Dravidian Phonology, published by Mouton, ASIN, B0006BZAIK. Dravidian Linguistics, An Introduction, PILC, Pondicherry Institute of Linguistics and Culture, 1990. Tamil Literature, E.J. 1970, A. Studies, 1st ed. edition 1985, ASIN, B0006EL29I. Introduction to the Historical Grammar of the Tamil Language, Oriental Institute in Academia 1970. Foreign and Comparative Studies, June 1988. Zvelebil has authored more than 500 bibliographic items including books, articles and reviews and translations.
Did you know Bata, the company that sold you your school shoes and chappals, is not even Indian? Bata was founded by this guy, Thomas Bata, in 1890 in Czechoslovakia. Bata became known for providing affordable shoes throughout Europe. In 1925, Thomas came to India to source rubber and leather for his company. And he was blown away when he saw that there were so many Indians walking barefoot. So he set up Bata Shoe Organization to make shoes for the masses in India. Today, Bata is so popular in India that all of us thought that Bata is an Indian company. But
hello everyone and welcome to Mr. This is Europe, and here is the Czech Republic. Now sorry, I have to say it. Let's check it out, shall we? The land which modern Czech borders encircle has been inhabited for a long, long time. What you're looking at is Devina Mountain, which is where this plus-size lady was unearthed, declared to be the oldest ceramic item in the world. A notable early culture on Czechian soil was the Unědice, who were rather adept at metalworking. They made several stone and terracotta tablets which no one can read, and their purpose is unknown. Around 350 BC, the Celts began migrating into the land, specifically the tribe known as the Boii, who allied with Hannibal in his war against Rome. The Boii gave their name to Bohemia, the biggest chunk of Czechia. That bit is Moravia, named after the Morava River, and that's Czech Silesia. Anyway, after 9 BC, Germanic tribes began moving in and taking over. But during the disordered time of Western Rome's collapse, many Germans moved out and were replaced from the 6th century by Slavs from the east, who were attracted by the good soil, big forests, non-frozen rivers, and already established roads and trade routes in function. These Slavs were gradually absorbed into the population nation, who became known as Czechs. The Slavs, though good warriors, were not united here, and therefore were subjugated by invading Avars from Central Asia. They eventually did unite, however, in a rebellion in 623 under a Frankish-German leader called Samo, and the Avars were ousted. After Samo, disunity returned, and this time the Franks under Charlemagne invaded Czech lands in 805, subduing the inhabitants into paying tribute. Frankish and Irish missionaries spread Catholic Christianity, and Moravia began to grow as a power. Great Moravia reached its height under Svatopluk, after whose reign the state was torn by infighting and weakened by a Hungarian invasion. Meanwhile, power was increasing next door in Bohemia under the Przemysl dynasty, one of whom was good King Wenceslaus, who was the subject of a famous carol. He was murdered in a plot hatched by his own brother, and soon became venerated as a saint. His brother's conquests included conquering Moravia, and in 1002 the Duchy of Bohemia joined the Germanic Holy Roman Empire, becoming a kingdom in 1198 under Ottokar I. Germans began moving in, and the country strengthened, and the Mongols failed to conquer it in 1241. A lot of this strength was due to the reign of Ottokar II, called the Iron and Golden King. He enriched and expanded the kingdom, beat the Hungarians, crusaded against Prussian pagans, built towns and fortresses like this, and while he dreamed of becoming Holy Roman Emperor, he died in battle in 1278. While the House of Luxembourg took control in 1310, the 14th century would see Czech history sail into a golden age with Charles IV, who claimed ancient Czech blood on his mother's side. He became Holy Roman Emperor, and Prague became the imperial capital, which he adorned with churches, castles, bridges, and universities. Indeed, Charles played no small part in making Prague what it still is, a top contender for the most beautiful city in the world. The Black Death, which ravaged so much of Europe, found its odious scythe a little blunted in Bohemia, but about 10 to 15% of Czech people died from it. Several seeds of Protestantism sprouted in Czech lands with the theologian Jan Hus, who, angered at the corruption in the church and inspired by John Wycliffe's ideas, such as having the language of the people used in services as opposed to Latin, began preaching against the shortcomings of Catholicism. Hus believed the Bible was more important for salvation than church rituals, and amassed a large following of Hussites. Hus was eventually captured and burned at the stake, but it didn't end there. The Hussites ignited a revolution that saw peasants and farmers fashioned into a lethal and effective fighting force under men like Jan Žižka, an intelligent, innovative tactician who ranks among the greatest generals in history. The Hussites defeated 5 crusades launched against them, and the Pope finally decided on diplomacy, and the frenzy died down and reforms made. But war weakened the land, and just under a century later, in 1526, the Catholic Habsburg Austrians took over. The Czechs were not happy about it, and this unhappiness materialized in 1618, when some Protestant nobles, angered at Catholics closing Protestant churches, marched into Prague Castle and threw 2 officials and a secretary out the window. They landed in a mound of manure in the moat below, but this act helped spark the ruinous 30 Years' War. The Protestant Czechs were crushed by the Catholic Austrians, and in 1627 it was decreed that Protestant nobles had to either accept Catholicism or get out. About 20% got out, and thus Catholics regained Czechia. The years following saw German culture triumph over Czech. Plague, revolts, Prussian invasion, famine, and more war. Napoleon's famous victory at Austerlitz took place in Czech lands, not far from Brno. Napoleon effectively ended the Holy Roman Empire, and Bohemia became part of Austria. The 19th century saw the reawakening of the Czech national spirit, with Czech writers and composers drawing inspiration from Czech history and culture in their hopes to inflame a move towards independence. Listen to this excerpt of the Dvořák and tell me you can't hear the zeal. Meanwhile, Austria was slipping, losing a war against Prussia and losing the First World War. The Austrian Empire collapsed, and the Czechs joined their brethren in Slovakia in forming independent Czechoslovakia, with Tomáš Masaryk as first president. Czechoslovakia soon became an industrial powerhouse, but then the Nazis invaded and took over, with the aim of Germanifying it all. Thousands of Czechs were killed, and the Czech Jews pretty much annihilated. And while the Nazis were defeated at the end of World War II, they were replaced by the Communist Soviets, and Czechoslovakia became part of the Eastern Bloc, that shivering shelf of satellite states pretty much under Soviet rule. Now there were a lot of Germans in Czech lands, but they were kicked out, and times were bad, and there wasn't much freedom, and by 1968 the people had had enough, and protested en masse in the Prague Spring, encouraged by the reforms of Dubček. Then the Soviets sent in tanks and 500,000 troops to brutally quash the revolt, in an invasion that made even the most hardened left-wing Western intellectuals squirm. The years passed, and the older generation of dissidents joined the younger in the peaceful 1989 Velvet Revolution, which saw the collapse of communism and parliamentary democracy restored, and the separation of the Czech Republic and Slovakia, with the beloved writer Václav Havel as Czech president. Economic reforms lifted the Czech Republic into prosperity. It joined NATO in 1999 and the EU in 2004. And while politics has been a little tempestuous, the Czech Republic has rapidly achieved a very high Human Development Index. A safe and peaceful land whose picturesque market squares and green fields and jovial beer festivals give little indication of the great suffering this land has endured. A land that has produced immense richness in literature, in music, in sport, in art, in science, in cinema. A land that welcomes more than 20 million tourists a year. That's the Czech Republic, and that's all from me for now. Bye-bye!
லாங்குவேஜ் வந்துட்டு செக். ஸோ இங்கே வந்துட்டு எல்லாருமே மேக்ஸிமம் செக். முதல் விஷயம் பார்த்திங்கன்னா லாங்குவேஜ். ஸோ செக் ரிப்பப்ளிக்கோட அஃபிஷியல் லாங்குவேஜ் வந்துட்டு செக். ஸோ இங்கே வந்துட்டு எல்லாருமே மேக்ஸிமம் செக் லாங்குவேஜ் தான் பேசுவாங்க. யங்கர் ஜென்ரேஷன் ஸ்கூலில் இப்போ இங்கிலீஷ் படிக்கிறனால அவங்க இங்கிலீஷ் நல்லா பேசுவாங்க. இந்த நாட்டோட சிட்டி கேபிட்டல் வந்துட்டு பிராகு. ஸோ அந்த இடத்துல வந்துட்டு நிறைய பேர் இங்கிலீஷ் பேசுவாங்க. அதோட அங்கே நிறைய ஃபாரினர்ஸும் அங்கே வருவாங்க ஒர்க்குக்கு, டூரிசம்க்கெல்லாம் வருவாங்க. ஸோ அங்கே வந்துட்டு உங்களுக்கு எந்த ப்ராப்ளமும் இருக்காது. நம்ம ரைஸ் செக்ஷனுக்கு வந்துட்டோம். நம்மளோட மோஸ்ட் இம்பார்ட்டண்ட் சைடு இது. ஸோ இங்கே வந்துட்டு அவங்க பாஸ்மதி ரைஸ் வச்சுருக்காங்க, புழுங்கல் அரிசி இருக்குது, அப்புறம் தாய் ரைஸ், ஜாஸ்மின் ரைஸு, நீங்கள் நிறைய வெரைட்டிஸ் ஆஃப் ரைஸ் இருக்குது. நமக்கு இன்றைக்கி பாஸ்மதி ரைஸ் தான் தேவை. ஸோ நான் வந்துட்டு 5 கிலோ பேக்கெட் நான் எடுத்துக்கிறேன். 5 கிலோ வந்துட்டு 310 செக் க்ரௌன்ஸ் கிட்ட வருது. அப்படின்னா இந்தியா காசுப்படி அது 1000 ரூபாய். அதே மாதிரி புழுங்கல் அரிசி வந்துட்டு 220 செக் க்ரௌன்ஸ் வருது. அது வந்துட்டு நம்ம இந்தியா காசுப்படி 700 ரூபாய். இங்கே பார்த்தீங்கன்னா நம்ம ஆனியன் செக்ஷனில் இருக்கோம். இங்கே வந்துட்டு 3 ரகத்தில் வச்சுருக்காங்க. ஸோ இங்கே இருக்கிறதெல்லாம் வந்துட்டு நார்மல் ஆனியன், அதெல்லாம் ஆஃபரில் வச்சுருக்காங்க. ஸோ இட்ஸ் அரௌண்ட் 10 க்ரௌன்ஸ்னால் நம்ம ஊருப்படி 35 ரூபா. அதே மாதிரி இங்கே வந்துட்டு சின்ன வெங்காயமும் வச்சுருக்காங்க. நம்ம ஊர் சின்ன வெங்காயம் கிடையாதுங்க, இது வந்துட்டு நார்மல் வெங்காயம், ஆனால் சின்ன சைஸில் இருக்கும். அண்ட் ரெட் ஆனியன்ஸ் இங்கே தனியாக வச்சுருக்காங்க. அது 30 ருபீஸ், அரௌண்ட் 30 செக் க்ரௌன்ஸ், அரௌண்ட் 90 ருபீஸ் கிட்ட.
அப்படின்னா உங்களுக்கு டிக்கா மசாலா, ரசம் பவுட்ரு, சாம்பார் பவுட்ரு, MDH பிராண்ட்ஸ், பாம்பே பிரியாணி மசாலா, ஸோ இந்த மாதிரி மசாலா ஐட்டம்ஸ் ஃபுல்லாக இங்கே இருக்குது. கரம் மசாலாவே வந்து ப்ரீ குக்டு ஃபுட்ஸு. நீங்கள் வந்து டக்குன்னு ஓவனில் வச்சு டக்குன்னு சடனாக குக் பண்ணி சாப்பிட்றதுக்காக ஆல்மோஸ்ட் ப்ரீ குக்டு ஃபுட்ஸு. இது வந்து ரெடிமேட் மிக்சஸ்ன்னு சொல்லுவோம். நம்ம ப்ரீ குக்டு ஃபுட்னு சொல்ல மாட்டோம், ரெடிமேட் மிக்சஸ்ன்னு சொல்லுவோம். டக்குன்னு இன்ஸ்டண்ட்டாக போட்டு வி வில் மேக் இட். இங்கே என்ன இருக்குதுன்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா அச்சாரி. நான் ஏற்கனவே சொன்ன மாதிரி இங்கே வந்து லோக்கல் ட்ரெயின்ஸ் மட்டும் இல்லை, மற்ற ரீஜியன்ஸுக்கு போகிற ட்ரெயின்ஸும் இன்டர்நேஷ்னல் ட்ரெயின்ஸும் இங்கே வரும். இங்கேருந்து ஜெர்மனிக்கு, போலாண்டுக்கு, ஸ்லோவாக்கியாவுக்குலாம் நிறைய ட்ரெயின்ஸ் இருக்குது. ஸோ நீங்கள் இன்டர் கண்ட்ரி ட்ரெயின்ஸ் பாருங்க அப்படின்னா உங்களுக்கு இது ரொம்ப யூஸ்ஃபுல்லாக இருக்கும்.